all we have to do is take the best of it.
We were tasked with doing 2 movies right off the bat. We chose Hulk because we believed that there was more to be showcased out of the Hulk character, and we chose Iron Man because we believed in the content and the concept and the comic.
He's a complicated figure, and I think he kind of represents the dark side in all of us, and that hope that we all overcome our own demons.
I had my eyes open. I came to realize that I have more to offer this world than just making things that blow up.
It's a huge reflection of how Marvel tells stories. People relate to Tony. He's a billionaire, but they still relate to him because he's laying out his personal problems, his relationships.
It's one of our most interesting characters, and it's our burden to convince the rest of the movie-going public that that's the case.
We went out to, I think, about 30 writers on the first film, and they all passed. No one was interested in writing this movie, so we just kept sending out this packet and a letter. Iron Man's a character, 60 years of history, one of the mainstays of Marvel. Pass, 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 pass.
And when it came to looking for a director on Iron Man, John's name popped up and said, we have to meet. There's something interesting there. He deserves a lot of credit for signing up with this new studio that, yes, we had producer credits and we had involvement in those early Marvel movies, but ultimately we're an independent studio with a Bond company that had never made a movie before.
David Maisel had come up with this whole financing idea that we could put together a big slate, doing it from the ground floor up, all in-house at Marvel. And it was all slowly coming into focus during Iron Man 1.
They had a fund, and we had exactly that much money, and we had exactly that much time, and we had a release date, but nobody expected too much of it. There was a sense that if we didn't pull it off, the studio wouldn't be around anymore.
And the fact that it's Marvel Studios' first film and it's not a big Hollywood studio, but it's really a big independent movie. You know, Marvel has shown that these types of movies could be very successful at the box office without having a big name driving it. So as a filmmaker, I was able to cast the movie as I would for a movie I'd love to see, whether it was a small independent movie or a big Hollywood movie.
I assure you that day weapons are no longer needed to keep the peace. I'll happily transition to manufacturing bricks and beams for baby hospitals, making hemp pants and the like, but until that time, can I get you a drink? Ever since Robert was announced as being Iron Man and Tony Stark, people really dug the idea, at least in the fan world, who knew what Iron Man was. And I think people who didn't know who Iron Man was intrigued by anything Robert would be involved with. The only time I've ever gone up to somebody at a restaurant was when I saw Kevin Feige after they announced Robert Downey Jr., just to say, Kevin, that was the dopest move ever. It explained everything about the movie that needed to be explained. It explained their intent, the integrity they had about which actors they were going for, and it was a real sea change once Kevin took over, and he said, that's the first decision I got to make as the head of the studio. I really took note of it. Playing someone who's conflicted for the right reasons and doesn't see the potential that they have and then starts living in accordance with a code is a great old-fashioned theme, but I hadn't ever imagined that I could be involved in something that demonstrates it on the scale. And, you know, stockbrokers coming up to me and taking off the tie and go, Tony Stark, man, let me tell you, in issue 117, the guy, you know, and I'm like, wow. Robert knew what a big opportunity it was to be cast in this role. I just finally know what I have to do. And it was a redemption for him in the same way that Tony was in many ways. I think there's a destiny to just about everything. All the guys you see down this row are pretty much the reason I'm here today, so I'd like to thank them. It gave me a great opportunity. And the other cast fell into place very easily because people seemed to like the idea of working with him and I together. Like that was interesting to them. People who wouldn't normally do that kind of movie, like when we were reaching out.
I actually don't think that you could tie your shoes without me.
I'd make it a week.
Really?
Sure.
What's your social security number?
When she'd agreed to be in the movie and she came into John's office, John started crying because he was so happy that he knew he had the right central elements to his movie. And then she was like, oh, baby, and then she started crying about something else, and then we're all sitting there like weeping. You'd have thought we were getting ready to do some really important like Merchant Ivory movie.
The fact that Robert was playing Tony I thought was so incredible, and he's always been one of my favorite actors and always been somebody that I wanted to work with. I committed to the movie without ever reading anything. It was just John explaining the character, explaining how the relationships were going to be, and kind of asking for that trust, that leap of faith. I'm glad I ended up doing it because it was a great experience and it was a great movie.
Yes. Can I speak to you for a moment?
I'm not part of the press conference, but it's about to begin right now.
I'm not a reporter. I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
That's quite a mouthful.
We had a government man, Agent Coulson, and we were like, oh, he should be from S.H.I.E.L.D. We were having fun with it.
So I was thrilled when I got a call. And then at that point in the script, the role was just a couple of scenes, and I was nervous because as a veteran of doing movies where you play in a couple of scenes, if anything's going to get cut out, it's not going to be Gwyneth or Robert, it's going to be you. And yet I just could not resist. Luckily, that character seemed to really fill a need. I think he helped lay the groundwork for this whole S.H.I.E.L.D. role.
You'll be hearing from us.
From the Strategic Homeland and
Just call us S.H.I.E.L.D.
As we were in production on the film, the idea of a Nick Fury cameo started coming up. And it frankly started with a cold call I got from Sam Jackson's agent saying, hey, anything for Sam? Actually, You think he'd want to do a cameo? Sam loves comics, he's read comics, I think his whole life, and he was well aware that he was the inspiration for the Nick Fury character in the Ultimates series.
When I was a kid, Nick Fury was a white guy running through the jungle with a whole bunch of other white guys. And then he was David Hasselhoff, and then I picked up a book one day and it's like, hey, that's me. I was, all in favor of it.
When we contacted his people, we were like, we need him for half a day. No one was supposed to know. We didn't even let him walk from his trailer to the set. We drove his car onto the stage, parked it next to the set. He got out, went right onto the set, did his thing, got back in the car, drove back to his trailer. We were so convinced that no one's ever gonna find out. It's gonna be such a secret. But it was so cool and such big news that by Monday, it was all over the place.
You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
And of course, he was telling that to Tony Stark, but that was also us telling that to the audience to see how they'd react. And the next week, after the film had come out, there were stories everywhere about who Nick Fury was, what that meant. Does that mean that these characters exist within the same universe? And that was what we intended. They do exist in the same universe. We started looking at the list of characters that we had: Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor, and all of the characters in the Marvel Universe that hadn't been taken yet by other studios. And listen, to be honest with you, the focus was make a great Iron Man film. Introduce Iron Man, start Iron Man as a new franchise. But in the back of my head, I thought, isn't this unique that all of these characters happen to form one of Marvel's most popular comic series, The Avengers?
It told not only Hollywood, but I believe the world that we are serious about telling great stories and we have great characters. And we're going after the best actors for these roles.
Everything was coming together all at once, and it helped push the envelope a little further. We had a group of talented people, and we did something that kind of was an unproven entity. It wound up being interesting and entertaining to people, and the audience has driven the success. That's what's been cool.
Marvel Studios had taken flight. More and more characters were being developed to take their place in this brave new world. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was about to arrive.
If I told you we were putting a team together, who's we?
After you do a first film, and if you're lucky enough that the audience is sort of clamoring for the next one, that's half the work right there. I mean, it really is. Okay, we've hit the tone. That gives you a lot of freedom to jump into what story you want to tell next. As we were finishing the last couple of weeks on Iron Man, maybe had 1 week breather and then went up to Toronto where we started filming The Incredible Hulk. We wanted to go back to the broader sense from the comics and really the fugitive type manhunt structure of the television series, which was just brilliant. Bruce Banner learned that maybe that monster within him is something that can do good. What Marvel Studios has done is very similar to what Marvel Comics did back in the day. They built individual stories that stand on their own 2 feet, and they found a way to take those stories and weave them into a larger narrative. And that's something that we haven't been able to do in the movies until the end of Incredible Hulk, when Tony Stark walks in to talk with General Ross. That was the first time audiences started to go, wait a minute, these worlds are connected.
Marvel had a sense that the Avengers were coming, so we slowly introduced more characters.
I guess I didn't really know what the future would be for the Black Widow. I didn't know whether she would reappear in future Iron Man films, so to be a part of it, it's pretty exciting. Final fitting.
Don't you look great?
What do you think? Questions, comments, concerns?
She weighed 170 pounds when I hired her. Once she got in this shape.
There was a lot of other things to take into consideration. There was Nick Fury's involvement because he became this cross-pollinating element.
Contrary to your belief, you are not the center of my universe. I have bigger problems than you in the Southwest region to deal with. My purpose is to come in and actually give more or less a history of who Tony Stark's dad was and what his position in the Marvel Universe should be. Clearly, you know my dad better than I did. As a matter of fact, I did. He was one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D.
What?
Howard Stark is an integral figure in the Marvel Universe. He's kind of the godfather of the whole thing. He worked on Captain America's Super Soldier program. He was associated with Nick Fury. He's an important figure. We had the idea of reaching out to John Slattery, and he only worked 1 day on Iron Man 2. It's a pretty integral day, considering how much he's gonna have to tie this whole world together.
One day you'll figure this out, and when you do, you will change the world. The biggest challenge is acknowledging prior events in the Marvel Universe, and how can we be smart about planting seeds for future stories?
I've been reassigned. Director Fury wants me in New Mexico.
Fantastic. Land of enchantment.
That's what I'm told.
Secret stuff.
Something like that. At the end of it, I think I turned to Captain Feige or Lou D'Esposito and just said, "What's in New Mexico?" And they're like, oh, Thor. Thor, you're in Thor. Did anyone tell you you're in Thor? And that was how I found out.
The Marvel Universe, it's called the Universe for a reason. It's a big place, so we wanted to go to a cosmic level with Thor.
He's from a place called Asgard, which is within the 9 realms, and he's the god of thunder. He has a weapon called Mjolnir, which is a big hammer.
His father banishes Thor out of Asgard down to Earth, and he strips the hammer from him.
You can well imagine that if a hammer, apparently evidencing extraordinary power and unliftable, arrives on Earth, then S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be interested.
Here I stand in New Mexico, where an anomaly has taken place. Agent Coulson is summoned to investigate and find out if there's anybody who's potentially worthy of recruiting.
I think the humor in all the Marvel films allows people to buy into the fantastical kind of world. Any chance you get to kind of laugh, it takes the pressure off, having to believe that there's a guy with a big hammer and a red cape flying around the place.
In Thor, you are introduced to a character who you really won't meet until the Avengers, but we do tease Clint Barton, Hawkeye.
I had shot a scene speaking to a then uncast Clint Barton in the crane, and to see those scenes cut together and suddenly I had a scene with this actor whose work I like so much was a real thrill. All right, show's over.
You know, in the first film, as Thor rose to become the hero, his brother, Loki, descended to become the villain.
Let me explain to Father. Father is dead.
What?
The burden of the throne has fallen to me now.
Loki is the one character that everyone loves to hate, and they hate to love.
Loki is this lost, damaged prince, struggling to find a place within the family, struggling to find a place within the universe.
What I did find exciting was seeing the formative moments in this origin story of a Loki who could then fire off into other Marvel movies with the audience knowing from whence the potential for evil came.
For people that are familiar with the comics, they know about some of the MacGuffins that people are after. At the end of Thor, we've introduced the Tesseract.
Legend tells us one thing, history another. But every now and then we find something that belongs to both.
I guess that's worth a look.
Well, I guess that's worth a look.
That is the Tesseract. That is a source of a kind of supernuclear power, which will give the holder of that power a kind of unlimited capability.
It fit perfectly into sort of the structure that we were working on across films. We knew that it had cosmic origins, and the only cosmic element that we've introduced this far into the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Thor, is Asgard, is the Nine Realms. So we started saying, what if that's where it came from?
In Captain America Red Skull, tried to become a kind of superpower with this Tesseract.
The origin of Steve Rogers, of Captain America, is inherently in World War II.
I love the period, I love the designs and the clothes and the technology and everything, and I wanted to prove that you could make a period action film and have it be as exciting as a contemporary one.
So we decided we're going to make a 1940s adventure superhero movie. You know, in hindsight, it was a great decision, but at the time, it was controversial internally. What was great about that is we got to spend the entire first act with Skinny Steve.
Steve Rogers was a product of something called Project Rebirth, the search for the super soldier, which was a secret government research program designed to unlock the potential that we all have.
A lot of superheroes are either born with their abilities, or they get them by accident. This was a normal guy who lived the majority of his life as a normal guy. And he chose it because of his values and his morals and being noble and honorable.
Everything that the military does in the Marvel Universe after that is an attempt to recreate the super soldier. We've already seen in The Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk, Emil Blonsky turning into the Abomination. Those were all attempts at replicating what Steve Rogers was. Mr. Stark!
Dominic Cooper playing Howard Stark was one of the most crucial pieces of casting in the film.
It's difficult to precede Robert. He's such an amazing performance. He enriches it and makes it all sound extremely truthful. Dominic did a great job of just kind of feeling like, oh, that seems like the loins from which Tony sprung. It just shows you a complex tapestry.
The structure offers our fans an interconnected world where continuity is important.
Cap, who's the leader of the Avengers, working alongside of Tony Stark, knew Tony Stark's father. And his shield, his most valuable possession as a weapon, was given by Howard Stark. That's what keeps us going as filmmakers.
A noble act on Steve's part causes him to be lost. And we soon find him, which is what takes us into modern day with the Avengers.
You here with the mission, sir?
I am
Trying to get me back in the world?
trying to save it.
The stage was set. Even after seeing several early successes, the creative team still hadn't played their biggest card.
Marvel Studios is going to take all of their top superheroes and they're going to put them all together in the Avengers. That's the most ambitious movie I've ever seen.
I think what resonates with these characters in popular culture is the humanity. And you see yourselves in our characters.
A Marvel comic that was one of my favorites was The Avengers. Because it took some of my favorites from Thor and Iron Man and put them all together in one comic. Like, you get them all for 25 cents. I very much followed the Marvel universe and took it very seriously. And when I heard that all this kind of leading up to an Avengers movie, I have to admit that I was pretty excited.
I just really enjoy when they create a world that you can kind of escape into for a little bit. Avengers, the movie itself, changed everything. What they had done in the movies before was obviously extremely informative and useful and fun, but there's also the element of, okay, you have all these parts, but how can you possibly bring them together? S.H.I.E.L.D. popped up in other movies. Sam Jackson has come in and been cool for about 2 minutes and then disappeared. Well, this is really where we get to see why he would ever think this was a good idea to form this team.
What a massive challenge. Impossible, really, in so many ways, to really assemble all these characters.
Nick Fury seems to trust you, but now I need you to come in.
What if I say no?
I'll persuade you.
Banner is a complex character, and he's a tough character. As Mark Ruffalo said when he first got cast, it's like this generation's Hamlet. Everyone takes a shot at it. And I thought it was a funny way of looking at it.
They enlist him as a scientist to help them track down this energy source that the Tesseract is giving off.
If there's any tampering, sir, it wasn't this end, at this end. Yeah, the cube is a doorway to the other end of space, right? The doors open from both sides.
In order to need the Avengers, in order to need to assemble this group, it has to be a day unlike any other, when a threat appears that no single hero could defeat. And in our film, that villain is Loki.
The Chitauri are coming. Nothing will change that. What have I to fear? The Avengers. That's what we call ourselves, sort of like a team. Earth's mightiest heroes type thing.
So we've made this movie called The Avengers, and the question burning on everybody's lips when we started is, what are they avenging?
Then I got this call from Kevin Feige and Lou D'Esposito saying, listen, you're a really big part of the Avengers. And I said, that's awesome. Because I figured, well, come on. All those big movie stars, Agent Coulson's going to kind of pop in and give somebody, a Slurpee. And they said, no, you have a really important part. It's integral. I said, that's great, guys. That's great. And then Kevin said, yep, what happens to you is what brings the Avengers together. And I said, yeah, Kevin, is this my last Marvel movie?
You like this? Even I don't know what it does. You want to find out?
Agent Phil Coulson has been, in his own words, the glue of the Marvel Universe. I think suddenly Loki's power and his malevolence strikes home, and they realize that they have to overcome their differences and save the world.
How do we do this?
As a team.
Millions of people in this country and around the world were watching an alliance of superheroes finally marshal forces to demolish the bad guys. And the result, the biggest weekend box office haul here at home ever.
Fans have been wondering and imagining if something like the Avengers would ever happen. They get their wish this year.
That people have responded to what comic fans have known for decades, that this kind of shared ongoing saga in mythology is of interest to them. That is incredibly gratifying.
I love comic book movies, especially Marvel comic book movies. I grew up with Marvel comics, and I never really matured.
Jeremy Renner was hosting SNL, and I was very excited because anytime someone from that Marvel world comes in, the costume department looks at me like, all right, what are you going to write this week?
Hulk! Yeah, Hulk smash! I know.
Well, I pretty much wrote it so that they would make me a Hulk costume.
Marvel was one of the deciding factors in how nerd culture started to spill over and begin to eclipse pop culture.
I'm here to announce that we're building Iron Man.
Yes, that's the sound of indestructible Wakandan vibranium.
For me as a reader and a fan, this was the stuff that made me love Marvel Comics.
Iron Man 1 was the first in a giant Avengers Assemble Phase 1, leading up to Avengers itself. Iron Man 3 is the start of that new road into Phase 2.
How do you up the stakes from Avengers when you take the characters that made up the Avengers and put them back into their own franchise? Well, I think you have to up the personal stakes. We can go deeper into their characters in Phase 2. And I think we did that with Tony Stark. Things get more grounded in everything that we've set up, but also more complicated and more challenging for Tony. There's an immense power about him, but he comes around and he says, no, I still have responsibility to do the right thing. Nothing's been the same since New York. You experience things, and then they're over and you still can't explain them.
We've seen now what they go through in Avengers and how they're returning to their own worlds, to their own storylines, changed from that adventure, but now ready to proceed to the next step. Phase 2 is all about being true to a film being a direct link to its first film, but also to the Avengers. And Thor, more than any of the other characters, went through a lot in the Avengers. The entire film was about him having to come to Earth to get his rogue brother back. And what's great, when you have continuity like we do, and when we can make another film and the audience is telling us, show us what happens next, is it in the dark world? You get to see what happens next.
In the immediate wake of Avengers, sitting down with Kevin and him saying, where do we go now? That was really exciting.
That brother relationship is one of the main engines of the Thor movies.
You must be truly desperate to come to me for help. You betray me, and I will kill you. Where do we start?
As Marvel Studios was unleashing epic adventures onto movie screens around the globe, smaller stories were being developed to expand the universe, giving fans a shot to further connect with some of their favorite characters.
The great thing about the Marvel characters is they continue to grow and evolve and expand.
There's a lot of other stories we want to tell. There are some characters we want to highlight, namely Clark Gregg, Agent Coulson, and we decided to do a couple of short films.
It seemed like a logical step when we were building the universe to be able to go into different nooks and crannies and tell stories that maybe didn't warrant a giant feature film treatment, but still would be standalone, interesting stories. And when you look at the history of the comics, there's great one-off books, and they're called one-shots. So we took that name for the shorts program and told these standalone stories that couldn't exist anywhere else but the Marvel Universe.
During the same call, when I was told about my impending demise, I was also told about these shorts. And I got the feeling that they did want to do whatever they could to kind of let us know a little bit more about Coulson, what his daily life is like, you know, just to build the audience's relationship to him in advance of what's going to go down.
So we came up with the first two shorts, Consultant and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer.
The funny thing happened on the way to Thor's Hammer was the drive from when we last saw Coulson in Iron Man 2 straight out to New Mexico to check out Thor's Hammer.
We found it. What I loved about Coulson, at first he seems kind of just like an annoying bureaucrat.
I want that car outside.
I do. But it's really more like a lease. As the story goes along, to my great thrill, he turns out to be a much more formidable character. Sorry for the mess.
Just those action beats that we had in there burned through 80% of the budget for both the shorts. So they came to me after I wrote the first one. They're like, it's great, we have the budget for two guys talking now. So in The Consultant, I thought it would be cool to see a couple of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents brainstorming a way to deal with this red tape, bureaucratic politics of what was going on with the Avengers Initiative.
We sent a patsy to sabotage a debrief.
A patsy?
Yes, someone screwed up. Someone's so inept that General Ross will refuse to release Blonsky.
It reintroduced Sitwell, who had a small role in Thor, and it was able to tie up a pretty big thread at the end of The Incredible Hulk when Tony Stark meets General Ross.
You know, I hate to say I told you so, General, but that Super Soldier program was put on ice for a reason. I always felt that hardware was much more reliable.
We had just seen the Avengers, so we thought about it for a while, and we're like, man, New York's a mess. There's probably those guns littered all over the place.
What if these young kids found the Chitauri weapon the day of the big battle of New York?
When we first conceived of the idea for Item 47, Eric was smart enough to bring in the character of Sitwell to kind of be the antagonist in that story.
Please stop squirming.
The Marvel Universe is so big and so interconnected that smaller characters can become more developed.
The short film, obviously you're restricted with money, time. So telling a simple story is a great opportunity for us to continue to expand other characters. So we developed Agent Carter. We know we have a resource in Haley Atwell that's being underused. Captain America perishes in the ice. He's not found. He's believed dead. What happens to Agent Carter?
It was fun to be able to play with the kind of chauvinism and sexism of the mid-40s office place.
Luckily for her, once all the men have left for the night to go drinking and she's stuck doing extra office work, there is an alarm bell that goes off, and suddenly there is an emergency mission.
This enemy will not hesitate to use lethal force. 3 to 5 agents recommended.
We framed her as an amazing superhero secret agent in her own right. She's played a bigger role in the universe that you've already enjoyed than you may have realized.
Tell her she'll be running S.H.I.E.L.D. with me.
Whenever we approach any project, it's always from the perspective of how can we have the most fun with this?
Bloody hell. It's not exactly the risk, is it?
All Hail the King was really conceived on the set of Iron Man 3 by Drew Pearce and Stephen Broussard.
One of the things we wanted to do was take the source material, the character, the ideas behind the characters, and find an entirely fresh take on them.
I was here in America for my big break. This would be the TV pilot. Caged Heat, wonderful beast. Handsome lad, handsome lad.
The Marvel Universe was expanding, and fans could follow across the movies and the short films. But now, an opportunity to give fans a weekly visit into the Marvel world presented itself. And to launch this new series, they turned to a trusted old friend.
I'll be honest with you, in the Avengers, as they were killing me, there's a number of takes of me looking at the camera going, I'm the glue! And, you know, I thought it was all over. It had been quite a beautiful ride, and really felt like the way that the fans responded to Coulson is kind of what breathed life back into him.
I'm clearance level 6. I know that Agent Coulson was killed in action before the Battle of New York. Got the full report.
Welcome to Level 7. We see this series as an opportunity for us to tell stories that happened after the Avengers and before Avengers 2. I like to think of it as the boardwalk through the Marvel Universe.
We've seen S.H.I.E.L.D. in all of the Marvel movies, and it's always Big S.H.I.E.L.D. We're sort of isolating that into this team of 6.
We go into superheroes, weird science, things from other planets, things that can't be explained.
This Goosa, very similar to the serum Dr. Erskine developed in the 40s for the
Super soldiers.
We are a team with some special talents. But basically, we're trying to help out or investigate cases that have not been classified yet.
Coulson understands very well what it's like to be a normal human in a supernatural world, and so he creates a team not unlike the way Nick Fury did in the Avengers. That translates in the world of people into someone who's not just a great anchor for us emotionally, but a great leader.
We're exactly the right team to go around and investigate new threats, people attempting to kind of utilize some of the technologies and doorways that we discovered in the Avengers. And at the same time, I got a feeling we're going to be taking care of some old S.H.I.E.L.D. business that might pop up. And pretty much anything that's in the Marvel Comics universe is fair game. This might be some kind of cloaking mechanism.
Maybe it created some kind of portal. Jump the train there.
Oh, let's hope not. I can't deal with Asgard today.
That's one of the goals, is to be filling in the cracks between these giant movies and be the piece that ties them together through the through line that is the Marvel Universe.
Hopefully, as it continues, there will be a little bit of weaving in and around the movies.
Your world is in grave danger.
We're inviting you, and you're getting to meet comic book elements between, Deathlock, Lorelei, Sif. It's been a great way to get people to experience the Marvel Universe in a different fashion.
This is Colonel Glenn Talbot, U.S. Air Force. I need to speak with whoever's in charge over there.
Move in, we have an agent down.
While the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. embark on new adventures each week, this spring, movie theaters worldwide will see the return of Captain America as he comes face to face with his past, and it will rock the Marvel Cinematic Universe to its core. 2013, Phase 2 got off to an explosive start. Worldwide audiences fueled the box office for Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World. With the cinematic universe continuing to expand, a founding member of the Avengers is returning to theaters in an epic new adventure.
I moderated the Marvel panel at Comic-Con this past year in Hall H, and people went nuts. I think Winter Soldier just kicks it up to the next level.
The biggest challenge is exceeding expectations. Not just audience expectations, but our own expectations. Unlike Iron Man, who goes back to Malibu and to Pepper Potts and to his best friend Jim Rhodes, or Thor, who goes back to Asgard, Cap can't go back in time. Cap is stuck now in this modern world. So more than any of the other films, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is going to connect most to Avengers.
If you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what's been constant? It's been S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury is still the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. when we open the film. The influence of S.H.I.E.L.D. has expanded because of what happened in Avengers. So here now is an organization who is built to address things like the raid on Manhattan by the aliens. And all of a sudden you find Nick Fury with more resources than he's ever had.
We're going to neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
Captain America's still not real sure about how the government has intruded into everyone's lives, and so we're trying to bring him into an understanding of what's going on.
This isn't freedom. This is fear.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. It's getting damn near past time for you to get with that program, Cap.
Don't hold your breath.
We get to see those other sides of Steve as he navigates this world of grays when he came from a place where it was very clear who the good guys were, who the bad guys were.
I like the relationship between Fury and Cap. I think they each maybe have trust issues. I think they've each been on the front line. They've seen battles and lost friends.
They're at odds, as Nick often is, with the other heroes. But in this film, we get to see how both Steve is changed by Nick, but even more importantly, how Nick is changed by Steve.
Nick's mentor, Alexander Pierce, head of the World Security Council, and very close friends with Nick Fury, comes to help motivate Cap.
Look out the window. You know how the game works. Disorder, war. All it takes is one step. There's a certain amount of mystery that emerges about the main character. He's got a lot of dimension to him. He's really shrewd, smart. I found that really appealing. To build a really better world sometimes means having to tear the old one down. And that makes enemies.
Just when you think Cap's embraced this new life, the old life comes in and punches him in the face in the form of Winter Soldier.
Most of the intelligence community doesn't believe he exists. The ones that do call him the Winter Soldier.
One of the best Captain America stories in the comics over the past probably 20 years is a storyline called The Winter Soldier. And that story influenced us heavily, obviously being the title of this film and one of the main characters in this film.
It's this operatic relationship between Cap and his equal, who just happens to be the friend that he thought was lost in the past. Bucky Barnes is one of my Howling Commandos during World War II.
In the first movie, when Steve rescues Bucky from the camp in the middle of the movie, he's being experimented on with the idea that Bucky's a little off and a little different now.
He's the one guy who actually didn't make it back.
Grab the hand!
He was found brainwashed, given a very similar serum to myself, and is now the Winter Soldier.
They really revived him to be this assassin and use him as a weapon to target Steve Rogers.
We start to explore that relationship, which is so intense and dark. When we first find Natasha and Steve, since Avengers, they have been tasked on many different missions together. They have gotten to know each other a bit. You know, if you ask Kristen out for statistics, she'd probably say yes.
That's why I don't ask.
Too shy or too scared?
Too busy! Cap and Black Widow are very different people.
It's kind of like this odd pairing. She has very questionable morality, and Cap's a Boy Scout.
We couldn't resist the idea of putting those two characters together because it's fire and water.
In this story specifically, it was important for us to have an outsider character, a character who didn't already work for S.H.I.E.L.D.
What unit you with?
58th Pararescue. But now I'm working down at the VA. Sam Wilson.
Steve Rogers.
I gotta put that together. Starting in the 70s, Sam Wilson was one of Cap's closest friends. They teamed up for many issues. In this movie, we've made him a part of a paratrooper team from the military. And it's a very sort of advanced flight suit.
You know, Marvel gave him a true background. They made him military ops, and it really made the Falcon a code name as opposed to his actual name. So I'm glad that they went with that, even though I was really looking forward to some spandex.
With Winter Soldier, you gotta up the spectacle, you gotta up the massive nature of this thing that people are anticipating.
We really wanted Captain America to be responsible for altering the cinematic universe so that when we meet all of our characters at the beginning of Avengers 2, things are very different than when we left the characters at the end of Avengers 1. And partially that's the experience that Tony Stark went through in Iron Man 3, and partially that's the experience of what Thor went through in the Dark World, but primarily because of the adventure that Captain America has in the Winter Soldier.
The price of freedom is high. And it's a price I'm willing to pay.
As we journey through Phase 2, audiences will next be taken across the stars, where another unlikely group of heroes will become the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Earth's mightiest heroes will reassemble to face a villain no single hero can defeat. With Phase 2 continuing to explode across screens worldwide, the studio is now looking beyond the stars to the farthest reaches of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Guardians of the Galaxy, it's not a good opportunity to kind of go a different direction. We're gonna see the world from a totally different point of view.
It does take us back to that same mindset we were in 6, 7, 8 years ago when we decided, hey, we want to make a feature out of Iron Man. Guardians has been around for years. Hardcore fans know them well from the comic, but really we're looking at something new. The driving force for me was to be able to create a gritty world that was